Welcome. You're listening to The Best of Investing. I'm your host, Edward Brown, along with my co-hosts who are not here, Mark Hahn and Nam Phan. So it's just me so far, except I do have a special guest who I'll introduce in just a second. I'm your host, Edward Brown. Our phone number is 888-912-1190. Use that number to answer the trivia questions for a 5-pack tanning certificate given away during this show. And that certificate is not sponsored by the radio station, but by Tan Bella Tanning Salon with 2 locations in San Francisco and 1 in Marin. Check them out. And today's trivia theme is just general trivia. Actually, you know what? This is general trivia. Okay. Our special guest today is Kerry Ettinger from Prime Residential Mortgage. Kerry, welcome to The Best of Investing again. We've had you on a couple of times. You always do a good show. Yeah. So
thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. So first of all, let's get into what's going on in the mortgage market right now, because you do primarily you do residential loans for primary residences and rental homes, right?
Yeah, that's correct. We do primarily, actually exclusively residential mortgages. So anything up to 4 units, anything above 4 units would be considered a commercial loan.
Okay.
And we do both conforming loans, which are, well, I should say conventional loans, which are your traditional mortgages, which include conforming loans. Those are the Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac loans.
Okay.
And then for the high balance loans, those are the jumbo loans. So those are the traditional mortgages, which fall into the conventional category of mortgages. And then for non-conventional or non-QM, QM meaning qualified mortgage, qualify in this case refers to qualifying under Fannie or Freddie's guidelines. So those are the non-traditional loans.
Let's get into the numbers from the standpoint, because a lot of people might not know how it gets divided up. So, what's the first level of a conventional loan?
So, a conventional loan, currently the limits actually vary from county to county. So it has to do with the median income and also the home value. And these are based on FHA's loan limits. Here in the Bay Area and all the counties surrounding the Bay that are immediately adjacent to the Bay. So that would be, Contra Costa, Alameda, Marin, San Francisco,
San Mateo,
Santa Clara, San Mateo. The standard conforming loan limit is $548,000.
548
and change. I think it's 548, 320 or something like that. Don't quote me on that, but it's about 548. And then there's also what's called a high balance limit.
Okay.
So for counties that, again, like all the surrounding Bay Area counties, they have this high balance limit, which in this case goes up to 822,000 and change. I think it's 822,250 or something like that. But anyway, it's 822,000. So when you're in that zone between regular conforming, that 548, and high balance, you could actually go either jumbo or high balance conforming. It's you're kind of in this sort of middle territory where you can qualify for either, depending on the guidelines of the loan itself. And then anything above 822 is jumbo.
Jumbo. Okay, so you kind of have those 3 levels.
Those are the 3 levels of conventional loans.
Yeah, okay.
The standard conforming and the high balance conforming being the 2 levels of conforming loans. And when we say conforming, that means those are loans that conform to Fannie and Freddie's guidelines and that ultimately they administer. They don't technically own loans, and this is kind of getting into more of the secondary market kind of stuff, but they act as the investor, but they're more as a pipeline, a conduit to manage the loans and have them packaged and delivered to the secondary market.
Okay. And when we come back, what I'd like to do is get into the various rates that you're seeing for those 3. Yeah. And then there's also, the 15 year is going to be different than a 30 year. Do you do anything different than 15 or 30?
Yeah, I mean, there are some terms in between. There's a 20, 25, there's a 10.
Oh.
But they don't, I mean, they're still offered, and every now and then you'll see them price well. You know, they'll usually when I say price, meaning the rate and or the points related to the rate, the cost related to the rate. Normally you would expect to see the rate and the pricing decrease as you go down in term, right? So a 15-year usually is going to have a lower interest rate than a 30, and that's pretty much standard.
And do they do a 40 years? Do they have 40-year loans?
Well, there are some 40s, but those are in the non-QM world. So QM in the conventional loans, those have a maximum term, I believe, a maximum term of 30 years.
Gotcha. All right. Hey, tell you what, we're going to cut to our first commercial break. Our first trivia question is a sports one, actually, and that is, and if you remember correctly, don't answer yet, right? We'll wait till we get back. Okay. First trivia question is: what baseball team signed a contract with Michael Jordan in 1994? Michael Jordan from the Chicago Bulls. Remember him? All right.
I do know this.
You do know this. Okay. Call 888-912-1190. The first caller with the correct answer is going to win that tanning certificate, which is worth over $100. Again, here's the trivia question. What baseball team signed a contract with Michael Jordan in 1994? All right. Stay with us. You are listening to the Best of Investing. Don't touch that dial. We're going to be right back. Welcome back to the Best of Investing. Again, I'm Edward Brown, your host. Don't have my other co-hosts with me, but we do have a special guest, Kerry Ettinger of Primary Residential Mortgage. Let's first ask our first trivia question, give the answer to it. What baseball team signed a contract with Michael Jordan in 1994? Kerry, go ahead.
The Chicago White Sox.
That is correct. Very good.
All right.
And before we get back to our show, I just want to make a mention here for Palio Restaurant, which has been a premier Italian restaurant serving downtown San Francisco since 1990. There's no surprise that it's been voted best overall restaurant in San Francisco by San Francisco locals. That's always good when you find out from the locals what's the best restaurant there, right? They recently went through a complete remodel, and they're in a brand new, more modern space. Visit them at Palio, that's PALIOSF.com, PalioSF.com. All right, Kerry Ettinger, let's get into the numbers here. Okay, so before we cut the break, you were mentioning that the conventional and the low balance is up to 548, roughly 320. What are the rates you're seeing as of today? And we're recording the show on Thursday, 2 days before it's airing, for a 15-year and a 30-year.
Yeah, you know, obviously there's a little bit of variance across lenders, but
yeah.
On average, right now we're seeing 30-year fixed coming in the low threes, about 3 1/8-ish. That's the average for what we call the vanilla loan, where you've got your standard well-qualified borrower.
Okay.
On 15s, we're seeing those about a hair above 2.5% on average.
Okay.
And those are fixed rate. On FHAs, we're seeing coming in the mid to high twos at about 2.65 to 2.75%.
But is that because they can put a little lower down payment?
As compared to a non-FHA 30?
Yeah.
FHA, they're in the business of trying to get people into homes, right? So they always they're always trying to remove those barriers, and the significant barriers are obviously cost, anything that's associated with cost.
Sure.
And the interest rate obviously, drives your monthly payment. So offering typically you'll see FHA interest rates at about 1/4 to 3/8, maybe even 0.5% lower than 30-year loans for equally qualified borrower.
Okay. And when
that being said, there's mortgage insurance on top of on an FHA loan. So sometimes the lower interest rate gets canceled out by that mortgage insurance.
And is it if you put down less than 20% or 20% or less is where you hit the mortgage insurance?
Correct.
Okay.
I believe on FHA, and I don't know if I've ever done an FHA where someone's putting down 20%, because typically
I mean,
folks.
that's the whole idea. You wouldn't put the 20% in with them.
Well, there are other reasons why you might go FHA in terms of credit score and things like that. There's a little bit more in seeing the guidelines. They typically can handle a higher debt to income ratio. So the guidelines are a little bit more relaxed. And I'm just trying to think off the top of my head if you have 20%, if you can avoid mortgage insurance. I'm not 100% sure. I think that FHA loans have to be insured.
Have to be no matter what. Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, because of the relaxed guidelines in general.
So now when you start to get to the high balance, the 822, 250 roughly around that number.
Yeah.
What are you seeing now for both 15 and 30 year?
Those tend to be a little bit higher than the standard rate by about, I'd say about 1/8 to 1/4%. So we're seeing those coming in and around the low to mid threes. I would say somewhere between, probably about 3.3 and 3/8 is kind of would be like a good sort of off the cuff average of what we're seeing.
Okay. And then when you hit jumbo above 822, what are you looking at?
It's interesting with jumbos. So jumbos are not they're not loans that are conforming, right? They're conventional. They conform to conventional guidelines, conventional mortgages, but they're not conforming in that they don't necessarily fall under Fannie and Freddie's specific lending guidelines. They're investor specific. There's general guidelines that have to be adhered to for jumbo loans to be considered a conventional loan, but there's a lot of features to those loans and requirements to those loans that are investor specific. You've got your Chases and Wells Fargos and Bank of Americas, and then other investors that you might not have ever heard of if you're a consumer that fund these loans. We also have our own jumbo products. And therefore, you kind of see a little bit more variation in interest rates. Some of them will price lower than others. Sometimes they price lower, the interest rate will be lower than a high balance conforming. Let's say you're in that zone between the 548 and the 822, and you're looking at either high balance conforming or jumbo. Sometimes jumbos has a lower interest rate.
Interesting.
Yeah, and there was a time in 2019 where jumbos were consistently lower than conforming loans. And there's a few reasons for that, but one of the main reasons is what they've found with jumbos is they tend to be a more, a less risky class of borrowers.
Oh, gotcha.
Because the qualifications are a bit tougher. Right, you have the debt to income ratio is lower, the maximum debt to income ratio threshold is lower. You have reserve requirements. You have to have cash reserve in the bank.
Okay.
A bunch of other things that are more restrictive.
Yeah, if it's less risky,
because that lowers the risk.
Yeah,
sorry?
You lower the risk for the lender, that you should get a little bit of a
exactly. All the pricing and rate is all related to risk. It's all risk related. So sometimes you'll see those priced out much better than conforming loans. And like I said, in 2019, the jumbo market was just primed, and the interest rates were really low, while conforming were okay, but they weren't performing like jumbos. And then what happened in 2020 or towards the end of 2019, we saw that kind of switch. We saw the jumbos, the interest rates all of a sudden shot up. And basically what happened was there was market saturation. And so these investors, their portfolios were full. So they had no incentive to try to acquire more of these loans, with the low interest rate. So the way they try to do, and this is the way investors always do it, the way they try to deter more loans is by increasing the interest rate.
All right. Tell you what, when we come back from break, I want to ask your advice for borrowers listening on the air as to how can they get the best rates, what they can do credit score wise, what advice would you give them for those people wanting to get loans. And then also wanted to talk about, you're independent, right? I mean, you're not like people who are hooked up with a bank generally are going to have to push one specific bank. But you guys are your bank basically, right?
Yeah, we're direct lenders, so we're not a brokerage.
Okay.
Yeah, we're direct lenders, so we fund all of our loans.
Okay. But you do have pretty good rates, though, so that'll put you above most other lenders for sure.
Yeah.
Hey, tell you what, here's our second trivia question. Most of a penny is made up from what type of material? Okay. Call 888. Yeah, you do. I'll call 888-912-1190. First caller with the correct answer is going to win that tanning certificate. Most of a penny is made up from what material? What type of material? Stay with us. Best of Investing. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Best of Investing. I'm Edward Brown, along with my special guest, Kerry Ettinger from Primary Residential Mortgage. Second trivia question. Most of a penny is made up from what type of material? Kerry?
I believe it's zinc.
You are correct. Man, 2 for 2. Right. Not bad, my friend. Batting 1,000 so far. All right. So what advice would you give borrowers? People come in, there's got to be certain edges that can help a potential borrower. What kind of advice are you giving out to clients?
Yes. Well, first of all, it's very important if you select to work with. You definitely want to get referrals because in this market, it's an extremely competitive market right now for many reasons.
Well, again, we're talking about for the borrower. So I'm a borrower.
Yeah.
What advice are you going to give me as a borrower?
Right. In the purchase or just even in refis?
Well, let's talk about both. So let's talk about on a purchase first.
Yeah, so particularly for purchases, because that is really the hot topic right now.
Yeah.
There was we saw during the pandemic, there was a lot of flight from urban centers, and the biggest impact were to surrounding suburban areas. So in all the surrounding counties from around the Bay Area, and we've seen it pretty significantly here in Marin. There has just been a surge of demand, and there's just not enough inventory to keep up with it.
Yeah.
So it's a very, very competitive market. Things are going well over asking, and we're starting to see bidding wars like you see in San Francisco. All that is to frame this context, is to provide context for the advice, which is, first of all, it's extremely important to work with somebody that you trust or have a referral to. This market is so competitive that you need to really have professionals and people with proven track records on your side, because strategy is really important.
I can just imagine if you just pick up some lender from the phone book, never work with the guy, and turns out he just can't get the job done, but he keeps stringing you along. You're gonna lose your deal.
It happens time and time again. And I definitely don't want to throw any other lenders under the bus. But everybody who owns a home or is refi probably seen those mailers that come in that are just deceptive advertising. So that's indicative of who's still in the industry. The industry has done a lot to improve itself over the last 10 years, but there's still a lot of people that you don't want to work with out there. So it's extremely important to have a trusted advisor.
Okay.
Likewise with an agent, it's important that you have all your, sort of your financial ducks in a row. And if you don't know what that means, talk to that trusted lender and they can walk you through what's required and what you need to do to get prepared. Getting pre-approved obviously is extremely important, always has been, but especially now, you want to make sure that you're thinking well ahead of when you're going to make the offer.
Okay, so let's talk about that pre-approval. What are you asking your potential clients to get them that pre-approval letter?
So I wouldn't say we're completely unique, but I would say we're probably in the minority of lenders that we do an extremely thorough underwrite during the pre-approval process. In other words, when we're doing a pre-approval, we underwrite that as if it's a loan that's moving in earnest.
Gotcha.
Right. So we have a very, very thorough pre-approval process, and that actually is something that works well for our borrowers, that I can speak to that when I'm speaking to sellers or selling agents. When my borrower has made an offer, I can really speak to the quality of our pre-approvals, which goes a long way. And I can explain that underwriting process. So it's a it's a fine-tooth examination of the borrower's qualifications with respect to the loan guidelines, and then once the underwriter has said yes, this person is going to meet all these requirements, then essentially they're pre-approved.
And then what's the shortest period of time once that pre-approval comes that you've been able to fund a loan?
In normal times, we can fund a loan fairly quickly. I think the minimum amount of time with required disclosure and waiting periods, I believe, is 7 days mathematically, 7 business days, if I'm not mistaken. But it's impossible to really hit that. I think the quickest we've ever closed a loan was maybe 12 days.
Wow, that's still really fast for conventional.
It's very fast, and obviously this is a borrower that would have been pre-approved, very straightforward, very a borrower that's providing documents very quickly and able to respond quickly. So everybody's just moving fast. The big issue right now, the huge bottleneck in the industry right now, is appraisals.
Gotcha.
So
I got to think title companies. Title companies too. I got to think title companies are just swamped. And so that's going to be outside of your
swamped.
Yeah. And
companies are swamped, but it's a little bit of a different situation. They can keep up. They just have to. They're under a lot of pressure, but they can work harder and longer hours. The problem is, or staff up. The problem is the industry lost appraisers during COVID. A lot of appraisers just didn't want to go into people's homes anymore. And then at the same time, there was a huge increase in demand for appraisals. So you had a lack of supply of appraisers and a huge demand for appraisals. And so that's created a huge bottleneck. And what we're seeing is sometimes we'll get an appraisal turned around in a few days. Sometimes it'll take 2 months. And and then appraisers are independent contractors, so they can request their own pricing within a certain range. So we're seeing appraisals that normally went for about $500, costing our clients about $1,000. So that is the real bottleneck in terms of closing something quickly. And again, working with a good professional is a matter of talking to everyone involved in the transaction and making sure everybody understands that.
And do you have a list of appraisers?
What's that?
I was going to say, do you have a list of appraisers that are go-to appraisers, or do you have to still do the bulletin board type thing?
You have to go through what's called an AMC, an appraisal management company, which is a clearinghouse that orders all these. Because as a lender, you can have no direct contact with your appraiser.
Gotcha. Okay, so they really do keep it hands-on.
You can't just call up an appraiser and say, "Hey, I need appraisal on this property."
All right, before we cut to break, give out your information in case people have questions on mortgages.
Yes. So again, my name is Kerry Ettinger. I'm with Primary Residential Mortgage. My telephone number, my cell phone number is 415-827-5960. My office line is 415-870-2752. And my email address is kettinger, so it's KETTINGER @primeres, PRIMERES.com.
Very good. All right, here's our third trivia question. In baseball, what number references the shortstop? Basically his position. All right. Call 888-912-1190. First caller with correct answer wins that tanning certificate. Stay with us. Best of Investing. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Best of Investing one more time. I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with my special guest, Kerry Ettinger from Primary Residential Mortgage. Third trivia question. In baseball, what number references the shortstop? What position?
I'm guessing here. This one I don't know. I'm going to say 6.
You are correct. 3 for 3. Batting 1,000. That'll get you in the Hall of Fame, my friend. Very good. Yes. Okay.
I feel like the shortstop might have been an add-on later on at some point because you have first, second, third base. Then you have shortstop, which is not associated with the base. So it's the last guy in the infield before he gets to the outfield.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but I guess I think they've always had shortstops. Since
I know. I always wondered why it was called a shortstop.
That's a good question. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay. So we Kerry Ettinger from Primary Residential Mortgage, and we're talking mortgages. Now, you and I have worked actually very well together because every once in a while someone will have some kind of a strange glitch or timing or something that doesn't quite fit your criteria for now. So you've referred business to me where I can just get a deal done a lot faster. Or, you know, and it's not that you're not fast. It's just that, you know, we have a little bit less roadblocks. But our expensive, but our rates are higher. So people use us at Pacific Private Money just to get the deal done. Then afterward, because we have no prepayment penalty, they go right back to you. Now they have a little bit more time. Maybe their credit score needs to get up a little bit, or their reserves, or just some nuance where they just couldn't get conventional financing. So that's actually worked out really well. You know, these conventional bridge loans. You know,
and especially now, you know, again, because the market is so competitive right now, that anything you can do to make your offer more attractive to the seller will definitely give you the edge. And you know, one of those things that sellers don't like are contingencies, such as the loan contingency, meaning if the loan doesn't get approved, then the deal's canceled. Appraisal contingency, where if the appraisal doesn't come in at value, you can cancel the deal. All these things. There's also oftentimes a sale contingency. So if you have a borrower who's trying to buy a new home, but they need to sell their old home first and trying to do that at the same time they're purchasing, then the purchase could be contingent upon the sale of the previous home.
And that's not going to fly. What's
that?
That's not going to fly with a lot of sellers.
You know, the sellers don't want these unknowns. Because it's so competitive and they have their pick of who they want to sell it to, they're going to go for the easiest and most profitable deal. Sometimes they're going to make a little bit less if they know that they're going to get it done. If it doesn't get it done, then they're going to list it. They're going to have to keep it on the market for another 30 days. So one of the strategies that Edward and I have employed is utilizing a bridge loan for folks that are trying to avoid those kinds of question marks in the minds of the sellers. So being able to secure funding for a bridge loan and being able to, what's essentially an all-cash offer, because the bridge loan does close so much quicker. You're able to come in with a much stronger offer because you don't have the loan contingency. You don't necessarily have the appraisal contingency. You certainly don't have the sale contingency. And you know, as we've seen, you can close those loans in a matter of a week or maybe a couple days longer than that, which is certainly sooner than our close times. So that really gives those buyers an advantage. And as we've also seen in the past, sometimes that actually, even though the costs and the rates on those bridge loans tend to be pretty expensive, we've seen that additional premium is outweighed by a potential cost savings on that home.
Exactly.
And sometimes you can see a reduction in price because of the enticement of an easy and quick close.
Or they don't have to move twice, right?
They don't have to move twice.
They don't have to move twice. So there's the emotional side of it, plus the expense side of moving, storage, and all that. It's
there's not for every situation, but you know, if the numbers work, it's a really, really great way to be, you know, going with a much more competitive offer. Essentially, it's like a cash offer, which is, you know, as long as the offer price is right, it's pretty much the most desirable type of offer to a seller.
Exactly. And what advice are you giving people who want to refinance? Is there any difference?
That's a good question. There's a lot going on there right now. So first off, we've seen, and this is sort of a new thing that kind of went into effect in May. We've seen Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. They really put a tight squeeze on refinancing and purchasing, really, of second homes and investment properties. It all has to do with mitigating risk. Everything in the lending industry is mitigating risk. And they made a determination that they needed to lower the risk profile by lowering the amount of notes that exist on second homes and investment properties. I shouldn't say notes that exist, but new notes written on investment properties and second homes. So the way they've been choking that back is by increasing the rates significantly. So right now, second homes and investment properties are kind of a tough situation in terms of financing or getting good financing.
Okay.
So that is something that is worth considering in terms of if you're looking for those kinds of properties, considering perhaps a private money loan it might be a better way to go sometimes, depending on how the pricing pans out.
I mean, are the rates different? Are the rates different, the refi versus the purchase? Your 15-year.
They can be depending on the type of refinance. So especially on a cash out refinance, where you're trying to access some equity, the rates are always going to be a little bit higher. And then for second homes and investment properties on refinances, the rate can be a little bit higher than on a purchase. And it depends on a few different factors. But yes, we can't. Oftentimes we will see the rates higher on refinances than on purchases. Again, depending on the merits of the loan.
Gotcha. Give out your information one more time, if you would.
Yes, Kerry Ettinger, Primary Residential Mortgage. My phone number is 415-827-5960. That's the number to my electronic brain, which I refer to it as because I can't seem to do any thinking when I don't have it. And then my office line is 415-870-2752.
And I got to say that,
Kay Ettinger at Prime Res.
Sorry about that. Kay Ettinger at Prime Res, yes. I got to say that, it's so competitive out there with the various mortgage brokers, et cetera. Some rates are going to be way different, but most of them are kind of in a certain range. And so it is really important to have someone you like and trust to handle that. So I've just, known you guys for a while now, and I know that you've treated your clients very well. You have good responses from your clients, good testimonials, and so people should check you out. Kerry Ettinger at Primary Res. I like that. Prime Res, but it's Primary Residential.
PrimeRes.com, I know.
Yeah.
Well, I think I would say the same for you. I refer you with pleasure to my clients who are in a situation where a bridge or a private money loan is the way to go. And I've heard nothing but good reports from the clients who I've sent there. So
well, thank you. In fact, I'll give out my information. That's Edward at PacificPrivateMoney.com. Stay with us. You're listening to The Best of Investing. We'll be back with some closing comments. Yeah. Welcome back to The Best of Investing. Last time for today, I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with my special guest, Kerry Ettinger from Primary Residential Mortgage. Now, we didn't have a trivia question, but we want the audience to know that there's a sport that Kerry is quite proficient in, and it's not your average sport. It is lacrosse. And in fact, it's funny because when I also host a sports show, and I've had you on for that to talk about lacrosse, and it's interesting learning about it. And I actually had a trivia question that I sort of invented, which was, what sport has the largest potentially has the largest landscape to play on? Like table tennis would be very small. Baseball would be bigger. So but then bigger than baseball, you have football or golf, right? Golf.
Yeah.
But and I made this kind of a hard trivia question, but when someone answered golf, I said no. I said potentially it's lacrosse, because back when the Iroquois Indians, I did a little research on this, and the Iroquois Indians, Canada, they would play over hundreds of miles, and sometimes they do it for war, and sometimes they do it for sport. And I don't know any other field that's larger than hundreds of miles long.
That's right. They would last days and weeks, and the entire team didn't come back again.
In fact, it's funny because even like the Indianapolis 500, even in the Indianapolis 500, they just go around in a circle. So that doesn't go 500 straight miles. Even what is it like Tour de France? How many miles do they do when they're biking?
Oh, that's a good question. They're doing basically a century every day for how many days is it? Like 20 some odd days. So
you know what? So maybe that's the answer then. Because that's a sport.
Or you could say surfing because you basically have the entire ocean.
Yeah, but nobody actually does it for the entire ocean.
I know.
You know?
Yeah, nobody covers the entire ocean. Yeah.
Yeah, I gotta change that
Maybe
question.
that's an unanswerable question.
Gotta change that question. And it's interesting. Oh, I gotta change that question again. Look, lacrosse. You know, when I was a kid, I was to say not that it wasn't invented, but nobody played lacrosse. Nobody played soccer when I was a kid. It was baseball and football, and maybe a little tennis.
Yep.
But it's amazing how lacrosse has gotten very popular.
Mm-hmm.
And what I think is amazing, how you hardly ever see a goalie stop a goal. It hardly ever happens.
You know, it's funny. You'd be surprised. I mean, when you watch highlights, of course you don't. I've actually had friends go like, I don't get it. It's like whenever you get to the goal, it's like it's so easy to score. It's like, well, the goalie is really the last defense. I mean, once the defense is broken. You've beaten the defense once you get to the goalie. The defense that is doing the job. Goalie is basically serves the purpose as basically it makes the goal turn into more of a basketball hoop, right? So you just have to be that much more accurate with your shot.
Okay.
Because the goalie is there, the goalie's active, and a good goalie will stop your shot. Basketball or lacrosse is very similar to basketball. I mean, the analogies and the parallels are very clear. Most people are like, oh, well, it's like hockey on grass, but no, it's really more like basketball on grass.
Well, yeah, because you're passing, and I mean, you can run down.
Exactly.
I mean, I can understand the hockey analogy, but
it's really more, the hockey analogy kind of falls away once you stop looking at the sticks and the fact that a lot of Canadians play.
Gotcha.
That there's contact.
Just keep whacking your opponent with the stick and get them out. That's what you do. All right, Kerry Ettinger, one more time. Give out your email and your phone number if people have questions on mortgages. Yes, Kerry Ettinger, primary residential mortgage. My cell phone is 415-827-5960. They can also call you if they have any questions on lacrosse. All right, hey guys, we are going to cut out. Here's our thoughts for the day. What is a pig's favorite ballet? Swine Lake. And what should you use with Batman shampoo? Of course, you got to use Conditioner Gordon. All right, tune in next week to The Best of Investing. We'll be giving away more free prizes for answering trivia questions. Thanks for listening. On behalf of our team, I'm Edward Brown, wishing you the best of investing. So long.